You are now entering PaleoRadio.
Welcome to PaleoRadio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Ho, 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 and a happy new year to you from PaleoRadio. I'm Jeremiah Bannister.
And I'm Joe Elder.
And this is your show, folks. It's Monday, January 2nd. Joe, we just passed the new year. We're no longer in 2016, my man.
Yes, we have breached the precipice of 2016. Now we're moving into 2017.
What do you think of that? I've seen a lot of people over the last, well, I don't know, maybe half a year, maybe an entire year. Let's just call it a whole year, who have bemoaned 2016 as a lamentable thing, as in some ways almost purely evil, maybe even the incarnation of the devil.
Yes.
Right? Like maybe 2016 is Satan himself. And so are you as doom and gloom about 2016?
Well, I don't think the year as a whole has been the worst thing in the world, but I do think upon history, there's always a time and a marker where you can say, this is the beginning of a turning point, and I think we hit one, and I don't think we turned in the right direction.
On some things. On some things, I totally 100% agree. And listen, folks, we have an amazing, amazing show per usual. You're welcome to call 616-656-1680. We want to thank all of our terrestrial listeners, all the people tuning in on their radios at work or in the car. We want to thank you for joining us, as well as everybody tuning in on your app or by going to publicrealityradio.org. I had an amazing Christmas, Joe.
Oh, yeah. How was Christmas?
I did. I had
everything you wanted?
It was everything I wanted, but I also had an amazing New Year. It was a real bummer, obviously, and I mentioned this in our last episode, that everything this year, right? Everything since July is a first for us without Samantha.
Yeah.
And so, first new school, first school year, even first things like parent-teacher conferences. I mean, you go and you're like, wow, I never even thought I'm going to experience this and only go to 3 different classrooms instead of 4. And New Year, we had one of her friends over, one of her 3 closest friends, and we had her over and her family, and we just had a really great time. And on New Year, I found something out that is extremely relevant to the show, Joe.
What is that?
And to you.
Oh, myself as well, huh?
Yes, because I have something here today for you, actually, that is a present.
Ooh.
Yes, I have a present. I have a present for you, and I'm going to, at a great sacrifice to myself, Joe, this is a big deal. All of our listeners are going to understand exactly how deep I'm digging to do this for you. But this Theracane.
Yeah.
I've shed tears over this idea, Joe. This is I've really become attached to this thing in a really short period of time, but I know how your back hurts sometimes.
Yeah.
And it does. And your neck, you're always squeezing your neck. And so I'm going to give you my original evergreen Theracane as a gesture of my friendship and my appreciation that we're doing this together.
I cannot tell you how proud I am to take it.
Yes.
Dude, thank you
There's
so much.
The official passing of the torch.
It feels good in my hands.
It does. We're going to have to get a picture of this
much.
With a celebratory handshake. And, of course, the ovation that happens every time we get pictures.
Yes,
so
thank you so much, man. I'm very proud. And I'll tell you what, guys, again, free plug, that Theracane, it works. It works.
Totally free. We're not on the hook for any of that. So we have a great show. We have tons of awesome topics. Again, 616-656-1680. Call and tell us about your stories about Christmas, about New Year. We'd love to hear those. But we have a whole bunch of awesome topics, Joe. It's almost overwhelming.
Yeah, we do. We have, just running down the list, there's fake news. We're going to be covering that. We're going to be covering some in memoriam, just how many people passed away in 2016. The number's high enough to just give it almost 15 minutes itself.
We might even do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it might we'll see, because there are so many big names, so many people. We're going to talk. This is going to be a lot of fun, Joe. We've got a couple that are on the fringe.
Yeah,
we got a couple of these stories. Number one, Bilderberg's website got hacked.
Yeah, Bilderberg got hacked.
Bilderberg got hacked. It's actually rather cryptic. I don't know how I feel about any of this. And, of course, we've talked about the tension in our system regarding any kind of hacking like that and stuff. Infowar's chart about
Infowars response to the media chart.
Yeah, to the media chart. Infowars has put together a chart that lays out different publishing companies on a grid, and it has to do with freedom-loving and tyranny. And, of course, they and others are on the freedom side, and a lot of the known suspects, right, the people you'd kind of expect are on the side of tyranny in the state. We're going to break that down. And the Deploraball.
And the Deploraball.
Boy,
Gotta
that was
talk
a real
about that.
That was a real bummer, wasn't it? A real shindig,
Yeah.
but it kind of fell apart there. I guess the alt-right's kind of eating themselves alive.
Well, ironically, you wouldn't think it, but when you have a group of people where the massive amount of their populace is trolls, turns out that they end up eating themselves alive more often than not. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So we have a whole bunch of these topics, and we're even going to throw in a question. And you came up, actually, you had what I think to be the perfect question of the day. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, about someone who died.
His name is Frederick Bauer. And this man, Frederick Bauer, this is going to be the question. We want to see what you guys think. We'll give you 2 hours, and please, as we always say, don't cheat and don't use the Google machine. But Frederick Bauer created something. He patented it, created it, and then in 2008, when he passed away, he was buried in it. And we want to know what you think it is.
And if you win, we've got a couple different prizes here.
We always have the goodies.
Yeah, and we're not only do we have some goodies, but we're even re-uploading on some goodies. We've had a lot of people reach out to us about some different things, and we're talking about that. But we've got things like shirts, magnets, you name it. We've got a whole bunch of things. We'll see. We'll dip our hands in the box and see what comes out. Make sure to give us a call, 616-656-1680, if you know the answer to the question as to what Mr. Bauer invented, right, patented, put it all together, and then when he died, he was buried in it. 616-656-1680. All right, fake news, Joe, biggest topic of the day.
Oh, yes, everyone's so worried about it. We should be, right?
Everybody.
We should be everyone should be shaking in their space boots over fake news.
Shaking in their space boots. And look, this is a serious, on the one hand, it's a very serious discussion. You know, I know we laugh about it, we poke shots. There's an actual scholarly debate to be had over what is fake news. What impact did it have on the electorate? Those are all valid questions.
And when has there not been fake news?
Right.
When has there been a presidential election that didn't have satirical and fake news? I think is a legitimate question to ask, because the idea is that fake news has just cropped up in the last 4 years. And no doubt, I think it's hitting a higher pace, but it's not like we're dealing with a beast that we don't understand.
Right here, despite media freakout, data shows fake news sites have tiny audience. And we kind of talked about this before. We intuitively kind of assumed. By Peter Hassan, associate editor at Daily Caller. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly, but you can follow him on Twitter at Peter J. Hassan, Hasson on Twitter. Despite a media blitz portraying fake news sites as having a real impact in national politics and even capable of affecting the outcome of a presidential election, fake news sites struggle to reach any sort of real audience. And they mention a couple. Actually, they mention quite a few, but they start with DenverGuardian.com. And that's a tricky name.
The Denver Guardian.
DenverGuardian.com. That sounds like a real site. And it's a .com. It's not one of those .cos that we hear all the time.
And that's the goal, though, of satirical news. You know, I'll wait to have my kind of counterpunch to it until we get later on in the subject. But there's a huge part to this I think we're all missing as people that indulge in news. But go ahead.
So DenverGuardian.com, subject of coverage from the New York Times and the Washington Post. Interestingly enough, in web traffic in the United States, if we go according to web analytics, the firm Alexa, DenverGuardian.com is ranked 91,688. And to put that number in perspective, this is according to the article, the site supposedly impacting the national political scene is more than 84,000 slots behind the website for a Virginia community college. And I mean, people need to be real about that. I mean, that's you say, wow, subject of coverage. So the New York Times and the Washington Post say, man, we really need to talk about this DenverGuardian.com fake news site. And yet, I don't know. I mean, the idea that they're 91,688. Patriot News Agency is not much better. The New York Times devoted a front page coverage in their Sunday paper to this. According to the article, the Times story emphasized the fact that, quote, Operators of Patriot News had an explicitly partisan motivation, getting Mr. Trump elected, end quote. But see, here's the kicker, is that Patriot News Agency is ranked 184,898 in the country. In the United States. I mean, we're not even talking the world. We're talking just in the country. The site's Facebook page has 113 total likes.
Yes.
We have 8 to every one of them.
Yeah, our show
has,
yes.
and that's not a lot. We don't, we're at 800. And listen, if you're listening, go follow us, please.
Yeah, add to that number. Be a gem.
We're cranking out memes like magicians on our wall, all original. You got to go and check it out. Tons of fantastic memes. Facebook.com/PaleoRadio. But yeah, it's sitting there, 100. What is this all about? How do you get front page coverage in the Sunday paper? That's the most sought after. I wonder if it was above the fold. If it was above the fold, that is like the pinnacle of ridiculousness.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think that these news sites' rankings are low, but they kind of take pot shots. So the amount of times that they have a story that gets carried to the amount of times that they have a story that runs is very small. But when one story does run, it runs through the roof. And when I think of fake news, I think of stuff where it's like global warming is a hoax.com, right? I don't know what the traffic is on that, but I'm certain that people will copy and paste that webpage to defend global warming against people. So they kind of serve a retrieval purpose more than a news dissemination purpose. It's an interesting...
and I kind of look at it, I was wondering this actually yesterday. I was talking to our good friend John Moseman from Colorado. I was talking to him on the phone. We were actually talking about this very issue, and I was trying to about climate stuff and fake news, actually. And I was asking him, I said, is it possible that it wouldn't be necessarily fake news if you have a site that disagrees on that issue, as much as it would be a wrong opinion? And that fake news would be something that would purport to actually be written as news, structured as news, trying to tell somebody the who, what, where, when, why of something rather than, hey, this is my take and my analysis on data.
Yes. Well, I think that's what it is. I mean, most of fake news is someone... The attempt is to write it out and have it delivered and packaged in a way that is exactly like news. Because here's the other thing. Fake news doesn't know it's fake news. They think they are news. That's the kicker is many of these sites, there are some where they, with knowledge, know that what they're doing is wrong. They know that they're posting bullcrap. Most of the ones that are delivering bad information, I think, believe they're giving a in-depth analysis of what's going on.
And that's the debate over Infowars. And I know over the weekend I saw something, and I'd be interested in this, about how Infowars.com, that it's no longer listed as a provider of news on Google. I don't want to spread fake news. It's a question. I'm throwing it out there. I've seen people saying stuff like that. That would be an interesting debate to have. And I think that would be – I wish it was a high-profile debate. I wish that it was kind of like the debate with Ken Ham.
Yeah.
I wish that we could have debates like that, very public, very popular, promoted heavily by institutions and leaders for people to tune in and to hear popular people debate issues like climate change, and stuff like that, and say that way it's not just these kind of small debates and forums.
And I honestly believe as a society we're trying to trade off our journalistic integrity for something that we're expecting the listener or the viewer to do now, which is why I think it's a problem. The issue I was bringing up earlier in the segment is I think the biggest issue we have is that people are looking at it and saying, can I trust CNN News? Can I trust MSNBC? As entities, yes. The problem is that CNN, MSNBC have times where they don't do enough journalistic in-depth analysis to know that they're running fake news themselves. I'm more concerned with bad news and bad information that gets disseminated through respectful outlets without much oversight. Because expecting the people to do it is negating some journalistic responsibility that they have. And I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest problem we have is the lack of journalistic responsibility.
And when we get back from this break, and we want to thank everybody for tuning in to Paleo Radio, episode 60, January 2nd here, broadcasting out of Grand Rapids. But we're going to finish talking about this and continue the conversation You're welcome to call 616-656-1680. The Guardian shared something recently, went viral. A bunch of different agencies promoted it, spread it around. Totally fake news, had to pull it. We're going to talk about Washington Post doing the same thing when we get back.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, live in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. We've got a caller waiting on the line. We want to get right to him. Mike, how's it going?
It's going great, and I always appreciate your programming.
Hey, thank you very much.
Yeah, my quick comment today is relating to this fantasy story of fake news, as if there was ever the oracle that we could go to and inquire and get the absolute truth. That's never been the case. And so in my mind, it's incumbent upon the reader or listener to ascertain what he or she believes to be the truth. Your truth and mine may not be the same, but to say, like I say, that because somebody put this or that out, oh, that's fake news. Well, there couldn't have been anything more fake than Bush and the CIA and the WMD, the aluminum tubes, the yellow cake uranium, the Al-Qaeda. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But now, all of a sudden, now that cost 1 million lives and trillions of dollars. But now, all of a sudden, because somebody leaked the emails of somebody, which turns out to all have been true, all those leaking, regardless of the origin or how they were obtained. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's hair's on fire. Oh, it's fake, it's fake. I mean, it's a bunch of garbage. I don't know what everybody's talking about. It blows my mind.
Well, thank you so much for calling, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
We appreciate the call. We know that you're on a time limit, and we just appreciate that you allowed us to go through the break, and you held on.
Yep, have a beautiful day. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. I think Mike brings up a very good point, though, which is that it's always been around, right? And when people are running around with their hair on fire about fake news. I have a question. Do you think the average everyday person is capable of wading through fake and real news right now? Do you think that most people are equipped?
No. In fact, that's been my clarion call since college. I mean, since J School, when sitting down, talking about media theory, media ecology, and then reading Neil Postman's book, How to Watch TV News. When I watched that, or when I read that book, I realized, even as a journalism major, even as a media major, that I was pretty ignorant of media ecology. What is a commercial? What is it? Is it a parable? Like, what role does it play? What role, in Postman's view, news is simply to keep you interested for commercials.
Yeah, it's a filler.
He takes a cynical approach, but he lays out his reasons for it. And this guy, he's a professor at New York University, for media ecology, and sitting there talking about it and saying, breaking down. Why do you see, for example, when people are driving down the highway, and our listeners, think about this for a second, reflect on it. You driving down the highway. How many times have you seen a billboard for a news station that has a man and a woman, probably in their 40s, right, in the middle, man with a mustache, woman with nice kind of poofy hair, nice dress. Then you've got a young guy, kind of a sporty dude, who is your sports guy. Then you've got your grandpa over there talking about the weather. Then you've got the woman over there doing the interviews on the street and talking about all this. The picture is a family photo.
It's a family dynamic.
It is a family dynamic, and it's intentionally done. That's what people don't get. And it's not cynical. It's saying this is people sitting around a room saying, if you have an image on a screen and you want people to trust what that person's saying, what are things we can tap into that convey that?
Well, and what's cynical is human behavior, not the actual people that are placing and doing the hiring there. What's cynical is that when you study human behavior, you find out that they're actually more trusting of a group that looks like that. So, I mean, I'm not trying to turn it on its head so much, but just to make the point that the reason they do that is because studies show if they don't, people don't watch or people don't retain the information the same way. So ergo, it's our own innate human nature that creates that as a situation. It's not just the bad media guys, right? They're responding to something the market's telling them. The market tells them people respond better to these family dynamics.
I learned this firsthand, Joe, with the whole idea of optics and what people see and how that plays into how they will receive what you're saying. Because people who followed me or who know my Facebook page, they know I used to have long hair and a lip ring and a nose ring, and I dressed kind of Kurt Cobain-ish, right? I had that grunge Seattle little Nirvana thing going on, Joe. Mm-hmm. And so I did. When I would go and talk to people, professional people, adults, people I'd consider peers, they would look at me regardless of what I would say. I could say the most scholarly things in the world. We could be on par with the conversation on anything. And they would not view me the same way that they did later when I had my hair cut. Mm-hmm. And I walked up to them. In fact, some of them, same people that treated me not so nice before, didn't respect what I had to say, they didn't even know who I was when I saw them the next time. I didn't have a lip ring, I didn't have a nose ring, my hair was cut, and I was dressed nice. They didn't even know who I was. Total 100% different way of dealing with me.
Yeah. And
that's that same way with the media, with the news.
Exactly right. It's the same exact thing. And this is the kicker, too, is a lot of people, when they hear that, go, oh, no. And they'll shake their head and go, we shouldn't judge people based on how they look. You're right. We shouldn't. But we do. We shouldn't, but we do. And if we do you want to fight an uphill battle the whole time? This is just a legitimate question. And some people say yes, and that's great, and you can. But if you know that we shouldn't judge people by their looks, but we do, then would you rather fight that all the way through your career, particularly your professional career, or would you rather conform to it and make it so it's a more natural plane? Like, for instance, for you, with the lip ring and the long hair, when you're trying to make your point, you have to go a step further than just making a good point. You have to make such a great point that they're overseeing the physical difference or the visible difference in what they're assuming is intellectual thought to what they're assuming is a disheveled look. Now, this is all based on assumptions, but we're trying to influence how people think. If you're influencing how people think, you have to know what people's assumptions are and play into them, right?
Yeah, well, it's hilarious because I used to probably once every couple days, if I wasn't being asked if I was the amazing atheist, and that's just a casual reminder that he's not calling home.
Still your brother.
Yeah, he's still my brother. But in between times of that, people would say, hey, are you in a band? Are you like an actor or something, or like a poet? And I'm thinking, yes, I do acting. Yes, I am a poet. In fact, I'm a published poet. I do a lot of these things, but man, I'm a talk radio host. Mm-hmm. That's what I want to do for a living. I talk politics and religion and culture and deep issues and have all this stuff. And when you change that, and it was actually Marshall McLuhan, Joe. It was.
Old McLuhan.
Old McLuhan.
The medium is the message, man.
Oh, it was McLuhan, and it was a video that he's sitting in this chair, and it's really cool. It's one of these swivel chairs that goes 360, and he's got a cool little microphone that goes up towards him from the armrest. And surrounding him, he's in the middle of this auditorium, and it's all dark all around him. There's just darkness. You can't see any faces or anything. And from different parts of the auditorium would come questions. And so you'd be surprised.
He's just firing.
Yeah, just firing from different parts around him, and he'd have to swivel around and talk to the people in whatever direction and stuff. Kind of a cool thing. But he said, there's a lot, and this is back in black and white, and this isn't new, right? He said that a lot of these hippies, these people who are making that same case, you shouldn't judge people by the way they look. It's like the Keith Green generation for Christian people, where he'd walk in and he'd have no shoes on, and he'd be wearing bell-bottoms and have long, curly, moppy hair and a huge beard, and he'd come in and play worship music, and all the Christians would freak out.
Yeah, because he was so different.
Because he was so different, and he had to make the case. Same thing, And so he said, you can't do it. He said it's a noble effort. It might even be the right thing to promote and talk about.
Yeah.
But people intuitively, just as creatures, will look at others and categorize them very quickly. Right, with these kind of heuristics and these very quick ways of categorizing people into different compartments to know where they stand and what relation they have with them. People do it all the time.
Yeah. Constantly they do.
Constantly. And so if you dress that way, think about it. And who do you think most Americans are going to trust? And this is a big thing to say. People like Bill O'Reilly and Chris Matthews dressed that way, or somebody like Lee Camp with his long hair, or take Jesse Ventura looking like he's at a Grateful Dead concert.
Exactly right.
And you bring those two guys on and you say whether it's good or not, their content may actually be more accurate.
Their content a lot of times I think is.
But they not only, like you said, you're totally 100% right. You said not only do they have to make a good argument, but they actually have to win another one. And that is a very old one that says you shouldn't judge all the things I'm saying and judge me and shoot down the messenger because I look like a hippie.
That's right.
That's an old argument.
And that's the thing is, again, we're not saying that we want it to be this way, folks. We're just saying that when you are engaged in debate with people, what you're engaged in is not only the exchanging of ideas, but exchanging your legitimacy to have those ideas and to share them. And people look at you when they first see you, and they judge on a lot of those things. Now, I am down for the person that says I can dress the way I want and you should listen to the content of what I say and not the way I look. Kind of the idea of like MLK even, where he said, I want to be judged based on the content of my character, not my skin color. That does make a lot of sense. We just need to know that that's what you're fighting when you do that. Like we're talking about, Lee Camp has to make a whole point first before it's anything he says, which is you have a reason to listen to what I'm saying, even though I don't look like I should be the person telling you what I'm about to tell you. He
looks like he's about to go up and play in the band Highly Suspect.
He does.
I mean, he just does. And so he looks like a rocker. And I love his show. That's my whole point is that I'm of the persuasion that it doesn't matter what somebody looks like. I'm willing to watch or listen to anybody, but I'm saying that the way that people just generally as creatures, right, as great apes, the way that they perceive things, the way that they break it down, that there's a sense of identity and trust that goes along with that, and this plays into the whole concept of the media in the way that people view it by saying, I identify with this person, and they look trustworthy.
Yes.
Yeah,
and they look trustworthy. Yeah. Now, and just to cap off the fake news article and what we were talking about, the appearance of looking trustworthy is the whole deal, that everything is getting pounded in and packaged in a way that's supposed to look legitimate and journalistic, and yet it's not. And that's what we have to look out for, I think, is just that consistent problem of things looking and appearing like they're packaged news, but that's up to us to know the difference. We have to know the who, what, where, why, and when. We have to know civics enough to be able to educate ourselves and differentiate between good news and bad news. Stick around, folks. We'll be talking about a lot of different things. The most conservative and most liberal cities in America, four completely different things Democrats are doing that are wrong.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
A lot of people died in 2016, Joe.
Yes, many people.
I'll tell you, those who are still alive, some of those have birthdays today.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so I wanted to give a big shout out to my friend Galen Brodus. I'm hoping I'm actually pronouncing his last name properly. We've been friends on Facebook for a while now, but I don't know if I've ever actually been in a video with him or watched a video of him or anything where it would pronounce his last name, but he's an excellent writer.
Yeah.
And I see his stuff over at Patheos, and he's got great stuff over on his Facebook wall, Galen. But I also wanted to give a big shout-out here to Professor Craig Corpola. Professor Craig, on Facebook, it says he's turning 36. That's interesting. He's a couple years younger than me, apparently.
Yeah.
You're doing good, Craig. Or maybe you're not. But I love him to death. He's one of my favorite teachers of all time. And a true friend and a mentor. He was my political science teacher at Olivet College, and we had very, very, very long, deep, rambling, rabbit hole kind of conversations, and he was always there for me through some really hard times. So when I saw that it was his birthday and that it was today, I said, I'm gonna say happy birthday to this guy. He's a really great man.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. This is just a little tidbit story that we wanted to get into because we want your folks' opinion. And again, you can call in 616-656-1680. This is from CBS News. But a man that alleged ageism is getting banned from Starbucks for asking a teen barista out on a date. And this is one of those ones where we're open to your opinion, folks. What do you all think, right? So this is the skinny. 37-year-old man said he was banned from Starbucks in Washington after asking a 16-year-old barista out to dinner. The man, who is not identified by KREM since he has not been charged with a crime, said he was at Starbucks in Spokane last week and wrote a note asking out a barista. He says, quote, "I was flirted with by a barista." That's a red flag for me off the bat, I just have to say. Usually that person's doing the flirting, not reciprocated. But anyways, I was flirted with by a barista. For some reason, she thought I was funny, said I was funny. So I gave her a note to see if she'd be interested in dinner. He said that when he came back the next day, a police officer told him that he was banned from Starbucks. Spokane police said businesses are allowed to refuse service to people as long as they see fit, but the man said he's facing discrimination due to his age.
You know, this is a tricky deal because remember earlier on when in the first part there, the nut graph of the story, there's no charges.
No, he wasn't charged.
Because what he did isn't actually illegal. And that
No.
Now I've gone and looked this guy up. Right.
Yes.
This guy's Facebook page is Loon Tunes. This is the hobby horse issue, and that's okay. Everyone's allowed to have their hobby horse, but it's not as if this is some kind of isolated instance.
That's brand new to him.
He's just some random guy. He actually is quoted later on saying, right here, he says, "I know the female Starbucks barista was of legal age to date." That's a valid point. "I broke no laws. I merely took a chance with my heart. I'm tired of hearing the word creep, as any black person or gay person is tired of hearing certain words. I have a whole web page dedicated to age gap love." And I thought at that point, that last line is like, you're an activist then.
Yes.
So how do we... can somebody who's an activist for an issue still ask somebody out on a date?
Yes, I think so, but I think the age of 16, and I know that a lot of people say, hey, the age of 18 is an arbitrary number, but when I hear the age 16 and I think of that, I think it just doesn't seem as right. Now, and don't get me wrong, didn't commit a crime in the same way that a man, and I'm sorry, but this is my opinion, in the same way that a man trying to coerce a kid into his van with candy isn't committing a crime yet. He's just giving a kid candy. And you can do that because what's the end game intent?
I guess I look at it this way and I say, this is terrible. This is terrible. I say, on the one hand, yes, I'm 38 years old. I'm not going to go around. Obviously, I'm married. I mean, this is, but going around talking to 16-year-old kids, I mean, you're talking juniors in high school.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, that's a real thing. But then we have to say, come on, state. Like, I mean, if this is the case, I mean, this is the age you said is okay. I mean, if that's the law, because what happened here, it seems, is we can all say it's not illegal, but it gets in that icky zone for us. And because that's kind of an icky, whoa, that's weird thing, that it justifies, like Starbucks, man. They said, "We have no tolerance for any such inappropriate behavior or harassment, and we will continue to support our store partners and local authorities investigating the situation."
Yeah.
They said there's no crime.
No. But the other hand, too, is I think the way we're going about this is we're looking at it from, and I know I'm using one of those SJW big M words, but we're kind of being misogynistic about the way we're looking at it. What about the barista? Did the barista feel uncomfortable? Did she say it was unwarranted advancement? Whether he's 38 or not, that's irrelevant to someone saying, this dude is a creep, and he creeped me out, and he was writing me letters at my job about taking me on dates, and I don't want to.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever written a letter or sent a text to somebody and said, "Hey, you want to go out?" I mean, I guess a text would be more personal. They have to give you your information, but at a restaurant.
But you know what? If the person, if I did and the person said they thought I was being creepy and too forward and I was told I can't come back, should I be offended?
I would be. If it was illegal, if it was legal, and I'm
but you're getting into the person.
I'm getting into the icky zone theoretically.
No, but it's legal to do. But the person is saying your advancement is unwarranted. I do not want it.
Then I would say if the place said, "Listen, you asked a person out on a date, they don't feel comfortable with that," I'd say, "Well, hey, I must have mistaken something." If it wasn't bad, if the letter didn't have anything too intrusive, if it was, "Hey, would you like to go out to dinner sometime?" That is not offensive to ask, and it would be not illegal.
Well,
it would be icky,
but we don't have the right.
Illegal.
We don't have the right to choose what's offensive to somebody else. Is a kicker though. When you can say, whatever, it wasn't. But that's not really our choice. Like, for instance, it's not illegal to catcall the living crap out of women walking down the street. You can do it. And there isn't something against it. And the woman can say it's unwarranted, but people can go, yeah, but it's a different individual every time. That accumulates to one woman getting catcalled all day long, and that's okay because it's only one small instance of a different person every time throughout the day. And we
need to have a
thing.
societal conversation then about passing letters to people.
Yeah.
Because it's such an old thing. I mean, it's really it's one of those like I don't see the harm in that. And maybe I'm wrong.
But what if
I'm
the
of
perception of the situation was entirely wrong? What if from the word go, she's like, this guy's being creepy. He was advancing towards me. I smiled and said he was funny, but I was like trying to get out of there. And then he wrote me a note at the very end of it too, on top of being very overbearing. Like, we don't have the opinion of the person who is the perceived victim, is I guess what I'm saying.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
And I don't think Starbucks just saw this note and said, this is what we're going to do. A lot of that would be indicative of how the person responded that received the letter.
That might be a safe bet. You know, I look at it and I say, I'm not sure because the debate is in the icky realm. You know, and it's one of those where if the law wasn't the law, and maybe it's a good debate to say, hey, man, there's enough people that think that this is gross, that this is inappropriate, that there's no situation where that really makes sense. So why don't we just bump it to 18?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that would have to be where the debate would be.
I don't even think the age is the issue. I think you don't even need a head count. You need the two people involved. And if one said, not digging it in any which way, and the other said, I was flirted with and they thought I was funny and I wrote them a note, those are... Hey, I'm speaking for one of the ones. We don't know what one of the people said. You know, so the age thing makes it... when you said that's what brings us into creepy land, right? It's because of the age of the person. But I also think a lot of it just has to do with the person on the receiving end and how they felt about the entire exchange. Maybe she was like, I did think he was funny, and I politely declined, but Starbucks said, we have a policy.
Agree or disagree, you're welcome to call the show, 616-656-1680. I will say this. I will not be out picketing in defense of this man.
Yes.
No, I've gone to his Facebook page. I mean, I've said about this particular individual, but in a theoretical sense, in a way that says, well, this is the law as it stands. We have a cultural ickiness factor kind of in this shady area between 16 and 18 that we've got, and it's worthy of a discussion. 616-656-1680. And actually, that number is important because we have a game going on right now.
We do have a game going on. And again, it's asking about Frederick Bauer.
Frederick Bauer.
Frederick Bauer is a man who created something. He created something that I'm sure a lot of us have used. It's an item that we do have, that we do see very often.
All the time.
And in 2008, he died. And when he did, he was buried in the item that he created. And I'm telling you, folks, you use it a lot. And if you know what it is or you want to guess, call in 616-656-1680 and guess what Frederick Bauer created and was buried in.
Yeah, 616-656-1680. We're going to get to a phone call here in a couple minutes. But, Joe, this is important, dude. Bilderberg was hacked.
Bilderberg got hacked.
Yeah, and for those who don't really know...
Follow the conspirators.
Yeah, the Bilderberg Club, and this is over by RT... For those who don't know, the Bilderberg Club is a group of European and American leaders from the fields of politics, industry, finance, media, and academia who've met annually since 1954. Their meetings are notoriously closed to the public and blacked out to press coverage. And listen, you and I both knew of the Bilderberg Group before a lot of people, it was on their radar. In fact, before it was really talked about very much ever in mainstream sources.
Yeah.
I remember when it first started kind of getting little bits here and there in mainstream coverage where people were like, hey, there's a big meeting of world leaders here today.
And you got to think, too, is how organized. If this is what I've always joked about, though, is if this meeting is the meeting of the end-all meetings, how organized is it that in 3 days they can get the world's plan for what all those leaders and thought provokers are all going to be doing? I mean, that must be one heck of a meeting.
All right, we're going to go right now to Cher in GR. She has comments about Starbucks. Welcome to PaleoRadio Show, Cher. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Doing good.
Good. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I work in a public place. I won't say where on the air. And I have to do customer service for everybody that comes in. And there was one guy in particular that would come in every day, and he he creeped me out. There were a few different things that he did. He would stand too close. He would try to put his hand on me. One time he tried to give me a hug, a couple other things. And it was over the course of time that I started to feel uncomfortable around this guy. And when he finally did, that one time that he finally did try to give me a hug, I raised my voice and I told him, no, back off.
You're pushing buttons.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yep.
They allowed him to come back, but he needed to leave for that day. Now, the fact that the Starbucks place had a police officer there the very next day, it tells me that the guy that was talking to the barista there was probably a regular.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that she was 16.
And they knew he was coming.
So it was probably over the course of time that this guy had made himself uncomfortable towards the woman.
Yeah, I think that's an astute point. It's a good point.
Thank you so much for calling, Cher. We appreciate the conversation. We appreciate that you opened up about that too. That's something that a lot of people they don't know about. They don't see behind the curtain there at stores and places where people work. They only see them in those brief moments where they're passing by or exchanging currency. And so to hear this from people in the private setting, the more intimate setting of what happens inside of places of employment is important. And I appreciate that you did that.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about the button pushing there.
Hey, that happens. Thank you.
You're okay. Thank you
very
so much, Cher.
All right. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. All right, 616-656-1680. It's a good point, and I think it's a safe thing going on to the Facebook page and seeing in this particular situation, seeing that we're talking about a hobby horse. We're talking about an enthusiast for a particular thing, and probably a regular, right?
Yeah.
Probably, and maybe even brought this topic up before. It's an interesting conversation.
It is an interesting conversation, and I think what Cher brought up, it brings up some very interesting ones too, where if the police officer's there, obviously there might have been more to it than just this one exchange. And when you look at the Facebook page, there's a little bit of evidence showing that I don't want to call it targeting because it is legal, but he may have been making advancements far longer than just this one time when he passed a note. But again, hey, speculation, and there wasn't a crime committed, right? So I mean, it's what an interesting area to be in. It's an odd spot.
It is an odd spot. And, dude, we're going to talk about this Bilderberg thing when we get back. They've been hacked, and there was a message posted to the members of Bilderberg. It's kind of cryptic, kind of creepy.
Yeah, giving them a timeline. You have 1 year to work in favor of humans and not your private interests, the hackers warned.
Scary people. We'll talk about that when we get back.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
If you love Paleo Radio and what we do here, and we know you obviously do because you're fantastic people, you can support our show by going to patreon.com/Paleo Radio and donating to us today. Patreon, we don't require a certain amount of money from you guys. The episodes are always going to be free, but if you do like the cut of our jib, you can donate, and we ask that you do.
I was talking to somebody about our Patreon actually just a couple days ago, and I said, here's the thing, is that people who listen to radio, a lot of times they'll listen and they'll say, man, this show is obviously just epic. They're heard all over the place. People are tuning in, wearing their shirts, making memes, liking their pages, all that stuff. Boy, they got to just be making mad loot. Wrong.
No.
Wrong.
Don't let the amazing lifestyle fool you, folks.
Yeah, don't let the amazing things that happen in Paleo Radio land, where everything that we say it is true.
Yes.
Don't let that fool you. We're literally at your behest. We've cast ourselves onto your hearts, is what we've done, and we've said this show is free. People, in fact, somebody was saying, well, I don't want to read this article. This is what brought it up. I don't want to read that article. It's behind a paywall. Why should I have to read for the article? And I said, because a person wrote it.
Yeah.
I said, a person wrote it, and you, as a journalist, If you take time out of your day and you're going and you're foying and you're looking at material and you're breaking down notes and putting together nut graphs and doing the inverted pyramid, and then you network with .com to get a job, and then you post it and somebody says, why should I pay for that?
Yeah, and be like, I don't see the value.
And I said, we can't dodge that bullet right now. That's just a fact of media, which has been evolving and transforming. And it's at a place now where people, if they say, well, yeah, the paywall, I do it too sometimes. New York Times, I run out of my free stuff, and I go and I just find the headline somewhere else.
And read it. Oh, I do it too.
Where it is.
I scumbag it a little bit there.
I scumbag it too. And it's part of the media landscape. And so what we're asking is that if you view this show, and if you listen to this show for 2 hours a week, we really are better than your Sunday paper.
I think we
are. I'm convinced of it. We're better, and not just because newspapers are dinosaurs that are going extinct, but partially because newspapers are dinosaurs
going extinct.
They're going extinct, and you sit there and you say, we're better. We got deeper stuff, better commentary, more accurate analysis, and we're fun. We even have games, and in fact, we're going to give you a hint on the game.
We are going to give you guys a hint on the game. With the whole entire thing, we're talking about Frederick Bauer, something that he created and then he was buried in. He created it, patented it, you use it, you have used it, or at least you know what this is, and he was buried in it when he was cremated. Now we're going to give you a hint. The hint is that it is a type of food container. Mm-hmm. Some type of food container.
You see it probably numerous times a week.
Oh, absolutely.
When you go in stores.
Absolutely. When you go in stores, you see it. It is a food container that is a common one.
Very recognizable.
Yeah. So, again, you can call in 616-656-1680 and guess what Frederick Bauer was buried in. What type of food container?
We've got a WPRR magnet. We also have some shirts. We're limited on sizes, but you're welcome to give us a call, 616-656-1680. We have Paleo Radio Team Tiny Dancer shirts. I think we've got a pink, I think we got blue, and we've got red in larger colors.
Yes.
I think.
And we're looking to be grabbing some more very soon. We'll let you guys know about that.
Yeah, and we've also got, listen, if you want to get one of our kids' shirts that you can have for your children, they can wear it around to all the places they go and show off Paleo Radio and Team Tiny Dancer. You can do that again by answering the question about Mr. Bauer and what he was buried in. And that, you can give us a call, 616-656-1680. But do this, Joe, this
Back to Bilderberg.
This Bilderberg thing, during the break, man, we were just kind of going through and saying, look at some of the creepy stuff that the hacker wrote.
Yeah, this stuff is, he went nasty, right? So he says, Dear Bilderberg members, he or she, right? Dear Bilderberg members, from now on, each one of you have 1 year, 365 days, to truly work in favor of humans and not in your private interests. He said, and this was, what else? What are you going to do about it? Otherwise, we will find you and we will hack you. This is what the person said. But this little blurb here is the one where it really hits home. The hacker writes to them and says, mind the current situation. We control your expensive connected cars. We control your connected house security devices. We control your daughter's laptop. We control your wife's mobile. We tape your secret meetings. We read your emails. We control your favorite escort girl's smartwatch. We're inside your beloved banks, and we're reading your assets. You won't be safe anywhere near electricity anymore.
That is terrifying.
That is some creepy deepy stuff.
That's some creepy doxer stuff. Some Looney Tune. And I mean this. Listen, people who've listened to the show, I have defended hacking. I have a nuanced position about it. I'd like to think that I'm not sitting there saying that it's a good that we all need to just be cool with it. I've also said we need to beef up cybersecurity and that it's an arms race, and that's just the way things are moving. At the same time, when you're a hacker and you go in and you say, we control your cars, we control your house security devices, your daughter's laptop, when you do that kind of stuff, and you're like, you're not going to be safe anywhere near electricity. The idea is to get these people so scared that they're driving around looking at all the wires and wondering,
how's this going to work?
How's this going to work? Where can I hide?
Yeah.
Where can I hide away from electricity?
Now, a lot of people would say, too, where they're like, well, I'm glad that someone's, sticking it to Bilderberg. But at the same time, you got to think about what tools you're using. Like, are you really okay with someone using this sort of leverage against other people to get what they want? I mean, this is essentially blackmail. And this brings up the same conversation that I always have with people, that they laugh when I say it, but when I say we should be concerned about other people and their private their private assets, their private emails that should not get accessed by other people. And if it does, we have to deal with it, especially if you're a public figure. I'm not saying that we pull a Penn Jillette and act like the information's not there. But we do have things to hide individually. We all have things to hide individually. And when people say I don't have anything to hide, I will always ask them, what kind of porn do you like? And would you say it publicly? Would you go out publicly on the airwaves like I am and people talk extensively about what type of porn you watch on your television or on your television?
Not many takers, I don't think, on that probably.
And ironic, right? Or maybe you want to talk about your father's alcoholism or something. These are things that get found out when people track through your emails, even your deepest, darkest secrets about who made the decision to pull the plug on mom when she was on a ventilator in the deepest throes of cancer, and they had that decision. And someone could make that a public one and say, it was Andy, it was brother Andy that did it. We read the emails. The point is saying that everybody has a vested interest in being concerned when people use leveraging private information against others.
We have a caller on the line. We're going to go. What line is it, Joe?
It is line 1.
Line 1, you're on Paleo Radio. Thank you for calling the show.
Hi, this is GR Chris.
Hey,
Hi.
Chris. How's it going?
Oh, I was thinking that we ought to get, a law to separate the media from our politics.
Yeah, we could try, but it'd be a real hard thing just because we expect the media to be the one that lets us know about politics.
Yeah,
it got kind of blurry there, because I'm thinking, we separate the church and state. Well, maybe we should do the separation of state from the media, huh?
Maybe so, but I wonder what we would get to where you have to have access to people, and there has to be walls of access. We can't – I know we would like to have it be that the president sits at their computer and we can email them questions and they just sit there and email them back, but at the end of the day, how much progress can you have from that? Where media has to have access and there has to be firewalls between people in high-ranking positions and the people that disseminate information, and they're almost naturally connected.
And hey, I've got Steve Bannon on a speed dial, but it doesn't mean that he's going to be on Paleo Radio. I don't have that kind of access, apparently.
That's right.
But Joe's right. The idea that I think that it would be good that the state not control it. And I don't believe that the state does. I think that the intermingling of them is unfortunate. And it's not just the state. It's also the nonprofit organizations of the parties. It is. It's the party structure. It's the state. It's the dark state. It's a lot of these things that kind of get mixed up with it. But it's a hard line. Like, I remember when I was reporting on I did some investigative stuff on police corruption and brutality in Battle Creek, and I didn't have the access that the Battle Creek Enquirer did. That guy, I think Trace Christensen has a key to the police department. I think he can just walk in. I mean it. I think the guy just has a key. He just walks in the morning. Hey, I'm here. He has access. Does that affect his writing? Oh, yeah. He's totally an apologist for the police department. He needs to preserve his ability to have that key. Yeah. He wants that key card. Oh, his integrity with them.
Yes,
he wants to, and that's how he gets his stories.
Now that I think about it too, it's kind of interesting because in the Law and Order bunch that I'm kind of part of, the Deplorables, that bunch. Anyhow, I was thinking that there was a lot of talk about this being a problem when we started bringing the television into the courtroom.
You know what? That's an excellent point. We'll talk about that as soon as we get back from our break.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for calling the show.
Mm-hmm, bye-bye.
If you want to join the conversation or if you want to win a shirt or a magnet, you have to answer our question of the day. Mr. Bauer created something, died in 2008, was buried in it, and it's something that you can find at convenience stores, shopping centers, and it's something you eat.
That's right. And after the break, we're going to talk about the most conservative and most liberal cities in America, the Infowars chart about totalitarianism, and in memoriam, all the people who passed away in 2016. You don't want to miss it, folks. Stick around.
You've been listening to Paleo Radio, exclusively with Secular Media Group.
We're passionate about compassion. This is Public Reality Radio, WPRR AM 1680 Ada, and FM 95.3 Grand Rapids, WPRR FM 90.1 Clyde Township, and WPJC FM 88.3 Pontiac, Illinois.
You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Paleo Radio with your hosts, Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Just enough time for a high five and then back at it again with the white vans. Here we are, Paleo Radio. Oh, man. Yes, goodness. Apparently there is no 2-minute break at the top of the hour, so we're just going to hit it hard, run back in.
We do. We run out the door. We give a high five, we run back in, sit down, and we're right back on the mic.
And here we be.
Yep, we're Paleo Radio. You can tune in and listen to us on Spreaker after the program. So later on today, we're going to go ahead and we'll post that on Spreaker. We've done a pretty good job. We've been trying real hard to make sure that it's available to our audience there. And listen, folks, Spreaker crowd, we love you.
Yes.
Yes.
We love you bunches. And iTunes crowd, we love you. And you know what? We mentioned Patreon. And if you guys don't feel like you can donate, which we understand because, you know, money can be tight, times are tough, you can always go to iTunes if you have an iTunes account and just write a comment, a positive comment on iTunes about our podcast. If you find us on there, it can do wonders for us. It's a golden goose.
You know, I think we had 5 people in about 48 hours who reached out to the show to volunteer for the show.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of them were asking, and thank you, by the way, y'all know who you are. Thank you for reaching out to us. We're going to work with you. But asking what they can do. And when we were talking about it, it's simple things that are completely free. That says, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/PaleoRadio, and click on the follow button, right? It says follow, and it might be highlighted. Click on it. And click see first. We don't post very often. We post probably at most 2 or 3 times a day. We post original memes all the time. I mean, this is like one of the things. That's our deal. I'm serious. Go and look at other shows and ask, are they pumping out original memes like crazy? We're doing that about the show, and we're inviting other people to join in. In fact, we had somebody, Patrick Crail. He made a daytime dictator meme.
Which is fantastic.
It's hilarious. You got to go check it out. And by the way, I totally was not growing the Hitler Chucky Chaplin mustache. That's actually just the coloration of my mustache. It was a full-blown stash that I was trying to grow. But the sides of it are just clear. They're just, totally clear. They're translucent. And so you can't see them in the picture. It's hilarious. You got to go check it out. It looks this kind of old, vintage, authoritarian thing. But we told them, we said, like, comment, share, mention. All of those things are super easy to do. All of them are free. All of them could take a second that says, hey, I recognize that you posted this. It's hilarious. Ask a question, engage in the conversation. Those things all help because we're all about organic growth. We're not even putting promotional advertisements. No sponsored ads. No promotions. We're sitting there saying, listen, we're pitching it to you. And we're pitching it in a way that says we don't want to be spammy. We're not going to be all commercially on you. We're not going to smother you with this stuff. But yet at the same time, we really hope that you take part in the conversation because we're active all week long, Joe.
Yes,
on
we
Facebook.
are.
Big time active. But listen, we have this conversation here about the most conservative and liberal cities. And I thought it was just so interesting. I guess when you first shared this with me, I had ideas for what I thought to be the most conservative city. And actually, to be honest, I kind of thought maybe Grand Rapids would be somewhere, maybe even in the top 20. And maybe it is. It only goes to the top 10. But this article can be found. It's by Naomi Shaven over at Forbes. It's called Most Conservative and Liberal Cities in America. New York City may be less liberal than you thought, at least according to The Economist, which pulled data from an MIT study on how city governments reflect their constituents' politics to produce a ranking of cities with populations over 250,000 people.
Yeah, so that's impressive. Who would have thought that NYC isn't nearly as liberal as we would have thought?
It's not. It's still in the top 10.
Well, yes.
It's still in the top 10.
I think it's usually top 3 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
It's not, though. So The Economist asked, quite Britishly, quote, would people expect Washington, D.C. to come second, ahead of Seattle, where it is legal to smoke pot, or the Democratic stronghold of Boston? As several articles have pointed out, though, the real takeaway was first called out by the Pew Research Center and then elaborated on by Vox, and it's this. The most conservative cities are skewed toward being more liberal than one might expect. The how much wood could a woodchuck chuck way to say this is the most conservative cities are not as conservative as the most liberal cities are liberal.
Yeah.
Interesting fact.
Interesting fact. But you would have to think, or at least I would think, that over time that is just the way it is because of what we're seeing with, public opinion on things like marijuana use or gay marriages has adapted in even areas that we consider to be absolute conservative strongholds as well. So that's not a big surprise. And the other thing is the way we see the SJW movement, sorry to break hearts, but that is a movement, that is a real thing that's going on. That's not always a positive thing. That is indicative of saying that liberals, there's a lot of liberals that are uber liberal, super liberal, the super liberals, right? And so I think you can see it in our demographics.
I think so too. So here's the most conservative cities. We're going to start with number 10, Aurora, Colorado.
Woo!
And I kind of thought that might be the case. At least Colorado. I knew Colorado would have a couple pretty high up there. Tulsa, Oklahoma. And by the way, just so everybody knows, that place totally sucks. I've been there. Tulsa.
No, of course.
Oklahoma is just a terrible state.
Yes.
I mean,
sorry,
yeah.
Oklahoma listeners. We apologize, but yeah, there's a lot of great places you could live otherwise.
Yeah, the greatest thing I think that ever happened with Oklahoma was the play.
Yeah.
The song, I don't know.
Because it was exported out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was exported out of Oklahoma. And listen, as I said, I mean, I know we've got listeners in Oklahoma, but I also know deep down in their hearts they totally agree with everything we just said. So Omaha, Nebraska is another one. And yeah, Nebraska, that's another not so much of a winter state. Anaheim, California. I thought that was interesting. Have you ever been to Anaheim, Joe?
I have not been to Anaheim.
Yeah, have you been to California?
I haven't. I've been to 43 out of 50 states, and California is not one of the ones. Hopefully this year. I've
been to California a number of times. Beverly Hills, Hollywood, of course, L.A., Greater L.A., different places like that. I've also been to Palm Springs, where my dad lives. Arlington, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah,
Arlington.
I kind of figured that. I mean, I lived in Dallas. And, the closer you get to Arlington, the more conservative it got. Jacksonville, Florida. Interesting. Colorado Springs, Colorado. I knew that was coming. That's like, James Dobson country, isn't it?
Yes.
Like focus on the family stuff?
Yes. Yep. Focus on the family stuff.
Focus on the family. And who's the other guy, man? Oh, I wish I remembered his name. Ted, is it Haggart? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Ted Haggart.
I think he was
He was in Colorado.
Wasn't he in Colorado Springs?
Yes. Ted Haggart was his super church.
His megachurch.
Had some, very, very big against homosexuality. Turns out he himself was gay. Or he wouldn't say he was gay, just had impure thoughts, and he would actually have sex with men, but that doesn't make him gay. Very interesting conversation to be had there.
Just did the gay stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Colorado Springs, Virginia Beach, Virginia. I mean, a lot of this stuff is like golf club territory.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. You're like, hey, there's a lot of golf courses there. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Again, Oklahoma making its way. That's number 2. It shows just how bad it is. And number 1, Mesa, Arizona. I would not have anticipated that, Joe.
Who would have thought Mesa would be the most conservative?
Who would have thunk it? I mean, honestly, if someone said, hey, Jeremiah, name the top 10 conservative cities, I wouldn't have even
Mesa wouldn't have been in my top 5. No way.
No, it wouldn't have even been on my radar.
No.
Yeah. And then we have the most liberal cities. Yeah.
Yep.
And so you got number 10, Baltimore. That's it. I kind of get that. You know, Baltimore is definitely a very liberal city. This is one I didn't expect. Buffalo, New York.
Is fairly liberal.
Yeah. Just the fact that Buffalo is in it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, we all know what Buffalo.
Buffalo
but I mean,
just tends to seem like one that's just on the outskirts of everything.
Yeah. And you're like, I thought they had a football team, don't they? Or do they still have one?
They have the Bills,
They still have a football team.
Yeah, they just fired their coaches.
Oh, yeah. So, all right, number 8, New York. That's the whole, there it is. It's not number 1. It's not in the top 3. It's not even in the top 5.
Wow.
New York at number 8. This was a surprise. Detroit.
D-Town.
Well, D-Town is more liberal.
Detroit has always been known as more liberal, right, with the unions and such.
Yeah, so Detroit's number 7. I guess I wouldn't have anticipated seeing it above New York.
No. Well, actually, it's kind of hard for me to say just because of with Motown and everything like that. That was always a big liberal push to have the liberal union cities and everything like that. But, it's hard to say. Detroit has always ebbed and flowed.
And New York has a very big Wall Street business sector. That's going to change the demographics a little.
Quite large.
Quite large. Yeah, so you've got that. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah.
I lived for a while. I lived right outside Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and a small town, Mankato. Actually, Mankato is where in the show Little House on the Prairie, that's where the doctor was when they had to go with the blindness situation. So I lived in that town.
With the blindness situation.
With the blindness situation.
Yeah.
So I lived in that town. Didn't get to spend too much time in Minneapolis, but apparently it's number 6. Number 5, Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That's I knew that. I knew it'd be in the top 5.
We knew old Boston.
Yeah, old Boston. Isn't that Chomsky land?
Yeah, park the car in Harvard Yard.
Right. Oakland, California. And in the picture, actually, that they use at Forbes, it shows Oakland, and it's this beautiful, it has these big mansions and stuff, and I'm like, yeah.
I'm sorry to be laughing. We're going to have to post a picture up here, folks, but yeah, their picture of Oakland is basically going to the most soiree, the most, schwammy part of town and getting a picture from an aerial view of their huge mansions. And you can see in the very, very far distance the skyscrapers of the city. So they're basically on the opposite side of the actual Oakland taking this photo. So interesting.
Yeah, they're in the burbs for that one.
Yeah.
Seattle, Washington. I knew that would be in the top 3, Joe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Washington, Portland, you have to think.
Yeah. Portland, dude, isn't on the list.
Portland is... Oh, come on.
Portland is not in the top 10 most liberal places to live in the United States.
I challenge Forbes on this. Open challenge.
Yeah.
It is hipsterville out there. They recycle. They have crazy recycling programs out there. They have free bicycling programs and all sorts of stuff.
Naomi Chauvin, this is Paleo Radio calling you out. You got to let us know here from Forbes, the writer of this article.
Constitutes liberal?
What constitutes liberal if you don't have Portland in here?
Yes.
For crying out loud. Okay, but they do have Washington, D.C.
Okay.
At number 2. And I knew number 1.
The liberal Washington
I knew
elites.
Number 1, dude. San Francisco, California.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's Michael Savage country.
Yes. Yes.
It's true. Savage hates that place.
Yes, he does.
He does. If you ever want to hear somebody, an old cantankerous man ramble on about how much he hates San Francisco because of all the gays and all the potholes and everything else, then all you got to do is turn on Michael Savage.
How ridiculous is that?
Yeah, he gets so mad every time. It's where he's from. He chooses to live there.
Yes.
He chooses to live there.
But he hates it.
He hates it. Every show he's just talking about how terrible it is and how it's a terrible place.
It's funny because, this is just an overall view of it, but it is very interesting that most conservatives really want freedom, but then when they see people living differently than themselves and it's not hurting anybody, in a lot of cases they're offended by it. And that's the thing too is, liberals often do the same thing, but they don't chide the freedom bell as often.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing.
I'm looking at these cities, and I'm thinking, out of all the conservative cities here, which ones would I actually want to live in? Obviously, nothing to do with Oklahoma and Nebraska. That's just a given.
No.
California, Anaheim.
I could live in Anaheim.
Yeah, I could live in Anaheim. Virginia Beach.
Yeah,
Virginia Beach, Virginia. I could enjoy Virginia Beach, I think.
It is worthy to note that Jeremiah and I are, if you guys didn't know this, shock horror, white men. And so our ability to choose where we can go in the U.S. Is a little bit wider than others. So that helps us with who and where we would like to live.
Yeah, so most liberal, you say, out of all of those, there's a handful of these states that I'd be like, hey, I wouldn't mind living in those states, or in those cities. New York, obviously. Fantastic place. You got Minneapolis, fantastic place. Boston, Seattle, San Francisco. I know Savage hates it, but San Francisco.
Oh, I live in San Francisco in a minute.
San Fran.
Hot minute.
It costs you an arm and a leg. You basically have to sell your children to the Catholic Church for it. But it's just the way it goes.
Small price to pay for seeing the Golden Gate Bridge, man.
Yeah, small price to pay for that full house there. I want to live where Saget and them lived. Come on. I want to live where those Olsen twins grew up.
Oh, that is fantastic.
I don't care if it costs me an arm and a leg, and I don't care if I've got to sell my 3-year-old to the Catholic Church. I'm going to live where Bob Saget lived.
That's right. We will live.
San Fran.
We're going to San Fran to ride a trolley. All right, guys. Up next, the 4 completely wrong things Democrats are doing post-election. It's going to be great.
Love
Stick around.
PaleoRadio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/PaleoRadio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
the studio just became very alive, Joe.
That's right.
Yeah, we had a couple of the Bannister beasties making faces in the window a second ago. My children were standing out there. They thought it'd be hilarious to make faces and knock on the window with about 10 seconds to go. It's hilarious. And we also have in the studio, actually in the call room, Jeffrey Saint. He's a bona fide paleocrat. He follows the show. He goes on our page. Actually, he commented and he asked us to name the other animals that we have in Paleo Radio Land because we shared a picture of our most trusted steed.
Yes.
The pretty princess.
The unicorn.
The unicorn.
And prove to us that it's not real is what I have to say.
Yes. Prove to us it's not real. We ride it. If our magic carpet if the paleo carpet is out of commission, then we take our trusty steed.
We take the steed.
We take our steed. And by far the most trusted in all of Paleo Radio Land. And he wanted to know the other names of different ones. I said, but Prancer, we got to come up. We got to find out and deliver on that.
There are many magical beasts in Paleo Radio Land, and we can share them. Especially, we'll make more memes of them.
Yeah.
It tends to be what we like to do.
So if you'd like to know more about Paleo Radio Land and all the amazing things that happen in our wonderful world of memes, you got to go to facebook.com/PaleoRadio. So we have this question, and we have to just announce this again because we still don't have a winner.
Yeah, we don't have a winner. And this is one that we really need people to guess. It's a good one.
You're going to kick yourself in your pants if you don't at least give it a shot.
Yes, and
you
again,
really will.
Frederick Bauer, he created a type of container that food goes in. It's very well known. We'll give another one. It's a trademarked food carrier of some sort.
Can we give one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
It involves a Raleigh Fingers mustache.
Yes. That can give it narrow the search.
Yes, it involves a Raleigh Fingers mustache.
So he created this container.
Yes.
He passed away in 2008, and he was cremated, and he was buried in said container.
Yes.
So it's just something. Who is it, or what is the container? 616-656-1680.
And real quick, man, before we move on, I want to give a shout out to old Chucky D. He posted, there's a quote from him on our wall.
Yeah.
Charles Darwin.
Yes. Thanks, man.
Of all the podcasts on my iPhone, Paleo Radio is certainly the most advanced in the evolution of the savage talk radio environment.
And we're not promoting fake news here to say that Charles Darwin did indeed write that.
He loves our show.
Yeah, and of all the podcasts that are on his iPhone.
We'll text you later. You got that Snapchat waiting for you, Chuck. So you got to check it out.
Yes. Okay. Well, and then we'll get into the 4 completely wrong post-election things Democrats are fighting about. This is by Nicholas Grossman at CNBC.com, which I think this hits the nail on the head, which is, yes, there's been a lot that's gone on with this election cycle. There's been tons that's happened. There's been some very negative things that have happened with Democrats. But more importantly, who to blame, right? We seem to not be getting past the who to blame stage. And, shock horror, liberals or Democrats don't particularly think it's actually just the liberalism. Being Democratic might have something to do with it. Being part of the Democratic Party, maybe. But this article breaks it down. And what Nicholas gets into first is, number 1, progressive economics and identity politics. He says, the fault line, partially dormant since the primaries, burst open after the election. Economic progressives blamed the loss on identity politics, arguing that Hillary Clinton didn't focus enough on jobs and other working-class concerns. Social progressives pushed back, arguing that abandoning people of color, women, and LGBT Americans would be moral and a strategic mistake.
As I was reading this, and I'll say this before we even move forward, is that like in these four points, I think that 2 of them I thought were just so poignant. They were really like right hitting it on the head. With this one, I thought, and I said, I don't know, economic progressives blame the loss on identity politics. That's true. But they say, arguing that Hillary Clinton didn't focus enough on jobs. I don't think that was the case. She did talk a lot about jobs, but she talked about it from a position that was not what the people in the United States, whether Republican or Democrat, this opposition to this classical liberal free trade globalist regime, the way that we've been doing things for a while with trade agreements. That was a referendum, kind of, in this country. And so it wasn't that she's not talking about these things. It's that you can talk about that all day long. I mean, you could be people would say, hey, we've heard that line before. But arguing that abandoning people of color, women, and LGBT Americans would be a moral and strategic mistake. But I don't think that Bernie's people were doing that.
No.
Abandoning gay people. I don't think that
No,
that was
they were
happening.
abandoning a party. They were abandoning a structure that was designed for them to fail. And when they failed on it, they walked. They were even told that they were, you can't just take your ball and go home, But if you break down the demographics of Hillary Clinton and her loss, yeah, she lost a small percentage across the board, right? She didn't get as many she didn't get as much of the black vote as Barack Obama did. She didn't get as much of basically across the board. Even white folks voted less for Hillary Clinton than they did for Barack Obama. But the one that was the major fallout, the one that dropped right out of the table, was the millennial vote. Where did the millennial vote go? Well, it was with Bernie, and those people walked when the DNC screwed him. That's a big story. I think it's bigger than identity politics. And the idea of that the structure in the system isn't what made people turn away from it, and that's all these outside sources, I think it's a costly mistake to make about reconstructing the system.
I just don't think that the way that he frames the debate is actually necessarily the most accurate as to what that debate was.
I agree.
But it doesn't mean that point number one, progressive economics versus identity politics, is a moot point. There's a valid debate that's going on with this, some of it that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
That says, that's not really your good point. And he brings up a couple of these.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is another one to mention, since we were talking Bernie really quick. Bernie said immediately after that he felt it was wrong or that it was bad that progressives have lost the middle class white vote. And what can we do to get that back? That's playing identity politics all over again. That's playing the demographic game. I understand trying to not have an ideology because of the problems people can see with that. But if you don't have an ideology that's encompassing everybody and you're going to play the moving demographic game, the moving target game, that's a problem in itself too. So, yeah, I don't know if he framed it entirely the correct way, but it is something worth noting.
Yeah, he says the whole fight's misguided. First, they're not mutually exclusive. You can easily care about widening economic inequality and black people getting killed by the police. It's not an either or.
Yeah, it's a false dichotomy. That's a great point.
False dichotomy. Second, it rests on the incorrect assumption that Donald Trump won because of policy rather than culture. And he breaks that down later, which I think is interesting.
Yes.
Third, Hillary campaigned on jobs more than anything else Clinton spoke about. She talked about economic issues far more than anything else. She didn't lose voters by harping incessantly on race or gender. And I thought about that, and I thought, if we look up, and he does this, he says when you look at a cloud of words that was used, right, a frequency of word use, that the frequency of her talk about jobs far outweighs any of her frequency of words like woman or things like that. But let's remember, when those things like woman were brought up, they were or race, they were super, super charged.
Yes.
So I don't think it's really fair to say, well, look at the cloud. This word's bigger, therefore that had the most emotional charge and impact of the words that she said. Because when she talked about race, I mean, it was Nazis. It was
That's right.
It was white nationalism. It was racism. It was socialism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia. It was very strong, emotive things. Whereas with economics, she talked about it a lot, but it was something that didn't excite people because they were like, well, man, this is still – we're hearing the same trade ideas in many ways as we do when we hear Paul Ryan.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Number 2, Trump was a bad candidate. And he says, this is the quote, but she lost to Donald freaking Trump. He's terrible. He should have never been this close. Anyone could have beaten him. Hey, it may be true. Democrats need to let this go. It's trapped in the bubble thinking. And sure, they would not have voted for Trump. This person wouldn't have voted for Trump, but millions of Americans did so enthusiastically. So that says something. It says the largest component of Trump's 63 million votes came from loyal Republicans. So that's just something we have to accept. And the other thing, too, is we can't back it up and say that all these people that voted for Trump voted for him enthusiastically either. I mean, that's
right.
A little counterpoint is that I think both people were not particularly in love with either candidate. And so you're going to have a kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation going on.
All right. Well, hey, we're going to go to the phones right now. We have someone who claims that they have an answer to our question of the day. Mike, you are on line 1. Thank you for calling Paleo Radio.
Hey, Mike.
Good morning, guys. It's Cool Mike.
Hey,
Cool Mike
Cool
Farage.
Mike.
How are you,
Yeah.
sir?
Good, man. I haven't heard the Pringles guy's name brought up forever.
Oh, look at him go!
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you, Mike.
I texted you, Joe. I thought he was one of two, and I verified it online, but I thought he was the freeze-dried guy. Then you guys brought up the death. Well, he can't be freeze-dried dead because he's dead.
Yep.
Yeah. And worth a lot of cash. Love your show. Quick comment, then I'll let you guys go.
Go ahead.
In regards to the Starbucks situation, we look at things, what your show does, and I like, it doesn't look at things as we just know it to look at. It's opening a book, and rather than just reading words, it's kind of like your show kind of like walks into the jungle and takes a stroll down into it. And I like that. And we tend to look at things on age, or we tend to look at things on various variables. Well, I think we need to do a 180 on whatever the situation is there. They had a cop, so normally you don't have a police officer. Right. However, if there are no laws broken, okay, then either the individual owner of that franchise or manager made a decision to ban that person for whatever reason. If there were no laws broken, then I that's just got to be an individual call there. Because obviously, if I walked in there, if I was a manager, would normally say, "Well, Mr. Farage, we appreciate if you would patronize this place," or, "Hey, you had a situation. There's a cop there." There's something we're not reading.
Something happened. Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
we're running out of time, but listen, stay on the line so that we can get your information, and that way we can connect with you over the gift. We have a WPRR magnet, and we also have some shirts. The thing is we have to figure out if we have a shirt in your size, and if we don't, we have an order going in, and we're going to be getting different shirts. We'll get your information, so you hang on. Angela's going to talk to you on the other line, on the other side of this. But thank you so much for calling, Mike. And yes, thank you for answering. The answer to our question of the day is Pringles.
It's the Pringles can.
It's the Pringles can. The man who made the Pringles can
was buried in
a Pringles can. He was cremated, and he was buried in it. And
only on Paleo Radio.
Only on Paleo Radio, baby.
You bet, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. We'll put you on hold.
Yep. 616-656-1680 if you'd like to be part of the conversation. When we get back, we're going to talk more about the 4 things that Professor Grossman, a lecturer at the University of Iowa, thinks that the Democrats get completely wrong.
Yes.
In the post-election. We'll debate as to whether or not it's true. 616-656-1680. We'll be right back with more of episode 60 of Paleo Radio.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, live in studio here in WPRR studios. We are talking about the things that Democrats have been getting completely wrong post-election. The first topic was progressive economics versus identity politics. The second one that we were getting into was that Trump was a bad candidate. And again, this is saying that this is an old, tired argument that people need to quit making. I agree with it. We need to move past the idea of Trump won. It's just so ridiculous. Yes, it is. I mean, I concur. Tip of the hat. It happened. But he's going to be the president, and we need to move forward from that. Just end all, be all.
He mentions that some people talk about Bernie being a better candidate, and I hear this all the time. In fact, I've said that myself. But Grossman doesn't buy that line, and there's a quote in here. He says, "When you believe strongly in something, it's hard to accept that most of your fellow citizens do not. Especially when you surround yourself with like-minded people and get your information from like-minded media. But the evidence that a majority of Americans are eager to pay higher taxes and give up their employer-provided health insurance in exchange for a European-style welfare state is non-existent." Here's the problem with that, is that there were hypothetical polls that played out between Bernie and Republicans and Hillary and Republicans, and more people were apparently interested in that European-style welfare state.
Well, I think there's a huge boat being missed here, which is that Hillary Clinton didn't actually do rallies in Rust Belt states.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders would have. So Donald Trump, the huge amount of people that he got, the supporters he got, were people like union workers. union workers, going into Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and talking to steel case workers and talking at manufacturing plants, and he got a lot of support there. Bernie Sanders would have gone to the same place and been there in person. Hillary Clinton, we have to remember, this is a big part. This is an ivory tower argument. But Hillary Clinton didn't go on the campaign trail. Now, there were reasons for it. You and I had a bet as to why we thought it was.
Yeah.
Her health. But at the same time, one way or another, Hillary Clinton wasn't doing that. Bernie would have, and that would have been someone combating Donald Trump's rhetoric on the ground floor where he got most of his votes. It may have changed things. I'm not saying it could have for sure, but it may have.
And it's not a pot shot, because this was actually something that was urged and later admitted by Bill Clinton himself. The bill said, listen, we should have gone into these places, these farm areas, these small union towns and stuff like that. We should have really focused a lot on that. And he even in the WikiLeaks, that was something that he thought that they should do. And the campaign did not. They did not feel that that was an important thing.
Yeah.
But that's debatable. People can debate that.
Yes.
You've got the argument that Trump won because of economic policies. That he cleaned up among the white working class and edged out upset victories in Rust Belt states, leading some to conclude he won because of his economic plans.
Mm-hmm.
But Trump's appeal is cultural rather than economic. It's a mix of anti-elitism, anti-political correctness, and white identity politics, not carefully cultivated policies. Take coal. The point is not that voters evaluated Trump's plan and determined it will bring back mining jobs. The point is that Trump said, I love coal. And after listening to politicians talk about how coal is dying and telling people in coal country they have to change, it was music to their ears. And actually, we talked about this issue of coal unions. I remember there was I think it was a Rolling Stones article that we mentioned early on, talking about this union town that union, that particular one, has an influence of up to 200,000 people. That's what they bring. That's the people that they reach and that they bring every election. And this was the first year that they did not endorse a Democrat for president, and they proudly endorsed Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They had his sign on their thing.
Yeah.
It's an anomaly, but the night of the election, that's one thing we saw from Mr. King over at CNN. We was actually giving props, but he pointed out, he showed the counties where you had a lot of these counties that went for Obama.
Yeah.
And they are red.
And they went for Trump. But the thing, too, is this is why I'm doubling down on it and maybe call it my cognitive dissonance. But what I would say here is that's why coal people voted. When he said, I love coal, that is economic. That's not, they didn't like it because they're like, oh, he agrees with my lifestyle. Their lifestyle pays bills. Their lifestyle gives them money to live. If you're threatening the lifestyle and someone says they're okay with it, then you're back in the good economically. Like he went down there and pitched them economic reasons to like him, not necessarily huge cultural reasons. Like, I don't think people that are in the coal mine actually voted for him for many other reasons other than they think he's going to come save the coal mine. I really think they do think that's what happened. That's what's going to happen.
It kind of cracks me up a little bit now that you've said it. When you have a professor, a lecturer at a university saying he didn't win because of economic policies, but because he said he loves an economic policy that certain people
I agree.
prioritize.
Yeah.
In every single one of his points, in CNBC, you really ought to take note of this. In every single one of them, the first point, he creates a fake debate that's not even a real discussion. It's a straw man, literally. Number two, Trump was a bad candidate, and he talks about, the
partisanship,
European-style welfare state that supposedly no one was interested in. And then in this, he's talking about how Trump didn't win because of economic policies, but because people liked that he agreed with them on economic policies that they have.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just so far in the three, so like there's good things to come from this, but boy, oh boy,
and his
rough.
His pushback, I agree. I really, truly think in that, I've been analyzing politics for 2 or 3 years, but this is my opinion on it, is that he won over a lot of people with economic pushes, particularly ones about bringing back manufacturing jobs, which is what a lot of people in my small manufacturing community think is a weakness of Democrats, that they can't keep those jobs, and that Republicans can, because Democrats sign things like NAFTA. And they want to sign the huge Atlantic, the TPP. So that's the view. And I think a lot of them go with the economics and the idea of bringing back the middle-class manufacturing group. And I think a lot of them won that. And then with Trump being anti-PC and, the media doesn't know what they're talking about and the polls are all wrong, I think that was icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But it's my opinion.
Number 4, focusing on presidential politics. You know, the Democrats have 2 separate problems. Number 1, presidential politics, and they're fine. Number 2, state-level politics, and we've been saying that for a while.
Oh,
They're
yes.
just trounced. With a flawed candidate in a closely divided country in which it is historically rare for a party to hold the White House for more than 8 years, they nearly won. But they've done terribly in state elections. Republicans now control 32 legislatures. Think about this. Republicans now control 32 legislatures. Democrats have 13. Northeast, West Coast, and Illinois, just like you'd expect. 5 are split. There are also 31 Republican governors, giving Republicans total control of 25 states. Democrats control 6. Instead of focusing on state elections, Democrats are obsessing over the presidency, as if losing a really close contest while winning more votes indicates that they need to scrap their whole approach rather than tweak it. And, you know, that...
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that makes me step back a little bit because, you know, I've kind of been... I haven't been a cheerleader on this, but I've definitely been of the persuasion that the DNC needs to change fundamentally on massive numbers of things, but they almost won in this situation with all of those factors in there. I mean, that's still presidential races. That's still strong.
Yeah.
State and local?
Well, I think they're reacting the same way that Republicans would react if they lost statewide elections and not the presidency, because they have 2 different fundamental ways of going about controlling the government. Republicans want to control the government through statewide control, and then they want to go into the federal government and demean it and say states' rights supersede federal rights. We want to have more control of the underling part of our democracy. And Democrats want to do the top-down structure where they put all their eggs in the basket of winning the whole shebang and using the federal government to supersede the state. So they just have 2 different strategies as to how they control it. So I think that's why Democrats reacted that way. But you bring up a great point. When you have 3 million more votes than the other person, do you really have to scrap everything? Well, the DNC leaks would say about a lot of things, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But you're poised to win a lot of votes right back. You have a lot of people waiting for you to just be just decent. Seriously, just decent. And you can get those votes back.
And that's kind of the tail end of this piece. Run someone without Hillary Clinton's baggage and lack of charisma, or Bernie Sanders' history and far-left policies, and you've got a good shot at the presidency. Now, I don't know about the history thing with Bernie Sanders. I don't know what's wrong with his history. But some of his policies, his far-left policies, I totally agree. But if you don't win more state elections, you're screwed. That's the final dump of the whole thing, is that's true. I mean, it really is. If they don't win more state elections, they're in big trouble. And I'll throw a bone and say, hey, man, this was actually by design. I remember back when the Tea Party first came around, and they were really involved in presidential elections, but they lost. Mm-hmm. And they regrouped and thought and said, we're actually going under the radar. The next time around, you hardly heard anything about it. But they were super active. They weren't active at a national level.
Yeah.
They were active at a local and state level.
Local and state.
And they swept it with a huge red wave that came through. And they've just been doing it ever since. They've realized that this plan they have of dealing with the states is going to lock it down so that eventually, if you keep doing that and you focus on the states, you're going to lock down better chances to win the Electoral College in presidential elections.
Yep. And it also shows, too, like, I think that the strategy just shows that starting with local governance is a better one. I think that of the 2 strategies that Democrats and Republicans are employing to win the presidency, Republicans have a better strategy, which is to start smaller and work your way up. It's also why the Democratic messaging doesn't work in those areas, because those people are used to being talked to on a level playing field. And when you're coming in from the big federal government or that idea, the perception is you're coming off your high horse down to this lowly place to discuss with them why they need to change. And it's not the same perception when you're trying to use the federal government down into the states. If you use it states up into the federal government, you have just a different view of what your motives are. And I think that's something Democrats have to think about in the future.
And for reform liberals who are looking at the stuff with a sense of seriousness and gravity, I encourage you to go look up Gar Alperovitz, America. I think it's America After Capitalism, I think is what it's called. Very, very, very good book. It talks about different ways that people can kind of evolve with the setting, the cultural context we're in. We're running out of time, Joe, but man, when we get back, we've got 2 things we really wanted to touch on at least a little bit, didn't we? We wanted to talk about the memoriam and the Deploraball.
Yes, we're going to chat with we'll get into Deploraball first, but then we'll get into the in memoriam because, man, we've lost so many people. We're going to have to spend pretty much the last segment on just what happened with how many people didn't make it to 2017.
It's unbelievable. And once you go through the names, it's just, it's literally mind-boggling. The number of people, and not just the number of people, but how popular they were. 616-656-1680. That's the magic number. We're coming down to the final segment of episode 60. It's January 2nd, 2017. You're listening to Paleo Radio.
Yes, and again, thank you, Big Mike. Cool Mike. You got the answer. Pringles can. We'll have another trivia question for you next week.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
Well, JB, interesting media outlet we have here, Infowars, and what they believe is to be tyrannical news.
Yeah, tyrannical news. And listen, you know, we've done some criticism and praise for Alex Jones and Infowars, but this chart right here, goodness gracious alive, you've got, it has a chart here on the top. It says independent. So the higher up you go on the chart, it's independent. The further down you go, it's state-run corporate foreign influence. And the far left of the chart is tyranny. Okay, so if you're on the far left corner, then bottom corner, then you are a state-run corporate, a foreign-influenced tyrannical group. And
yes.
That would include NPR, ABC, Washington Post, USA Today. You know, it would include CNN. You go up the list. You know, you've got all these ones here in there. The Guardian, that gets closer to independent. The Young Turks, Daily Beast, that's closer to independent, but still on the tyranny side.
But still tyrannical.
Yeah, and on the other side, on the freedom and independent side, at the very, very, very top, Prison Planet, Infowars, of course. It's interesting. Well, when you have a situation where your organization puts out something, that you end up being the most independent and free agency on the list.
Yeah, you are.
You are. And you're the one that...
And all the rest are hacks.
All the rest are hacks. You know,
yes.
Speaking of a bunch of hacks, the Trump fans' Deploraball party shows rift in an alt-right movement. This is Reuters, New York, reporting by Layla Kearney. And they talk about this Deploraball that took place. And I saw this unfold on Twitter. I saw everything break down. It's a cocktail party for supporters from all ethnic backgrounds. No incendiary or discriminatory actions will be allowed. They call themselves Trumpists and say they've sold 1,000 tickets ranging in price from $99 to $2,500. Performers will include singer Scott Isbell and classical pianist Stephen Limbaugh, according to the organizers, who've also invited rapper Kanye West, but have not heard back. And, of course, it's going to include Milo Yiannopoulos, Mike Cernovich. But they got rid of Tim Treadstone, a.k.a. Baked Alaska. They said, you're out of here, buddy.
See ya, Baked Alaska.
You're out of here. And it had to do with anti-Semitic comments and racist stuff, homophobic stuff. Cernovich wrote, the lines are drawn and the fracture is more or less complete. Cernovich said Treadstone is increasingly fixated on Jewish conspiracy theories and nationalism, the victim culture and identity politics. That's what it used to be focused on a lot more. Whereas Treadstone says if you don't support white advocacy, you cannot be alt-right. And that's where a lot of people are running into a problem. I thought about it and said you should go back. People should go back and listen to our show. In fact, we talked about this exact topic on episode number 55. It's available for free on Spreaker and iTunes.
Yeah, we talked about the exact same thing.
Yes, the exact same thing.
Yep, and we talked about how they would probably most likely eat themselves alive.
Yeah,
as well, which is the case.
But a lot of people died, Joe, in 2016. It's depressing. Just even seeing the list makes my heart break.
Yes, and this list is extensive. But we had so many people. It says this is from Yahoo News. As 2016 draws to a close, Yahoo News is looking back on the icons we say goodbye to along the way. An attorney general, an Egyptian diplomat, an Israeli statesman, and they all stand along the sides of giants in the music industry, film and television, and even one psychic. Join us in remembering them from the world-famous celebrities and below the radar titans of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, you got Pat Harrington Jr., and when I saw the picture of him, I said, man, that just really brings back memories. He played the role of Schneider on One Day at a Time.
Yes.
That's old school. David Bowie, of course.
David Bowie, yes. I mean, what can you say about David Bowie? I always think, when I first think him, I always think of The Labyrinth, because I was a young boy. I always watched The Labyrinth, and I just remember him with that giant cup on, singing The Power of the Babe.
Gary Shandling.
Yeah.
That broke my heart, man. I remember his show growing up, and it was so funny. He was such a funny guy. Alan Rickman, who I have to say was the best as the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood with Kevin Costner. One of the best bad guy roles you can possibly have played was Alan Rickman. He was great. Maurice White, founding member of Earth, Wind, and Fire. Dave Mirra, the extreme sports guy, committed suicide.
Dave Mirra did, and he also blamed it on CTD. He believed that, and they confirmed that is indeed what was going on with Dave Mirra.
Scalia.
Yeah, Justice Antonin Scalia.
That's a big one. Scalia. Nancy Reagan.
Nancy Reagan passed away.
And, dude, we have to mention Rob Ford.
Yeah.
The 64th mayor of Toronto, the guy we all know from smoking crack, the fat guy smoking tons of crack rock, that guy is dead. At age 46, he died of cancer.
He died of cancer.
That's surprising.
Yep. Glenn Frey, who's the singer-songwriter known as the founding member, or one of the founding members of the Eagles, he passed away on January 18th at the age of 67.
Yep. Prince, that was obviously that was one that tons of people were talking about. I remember when that happened, just the news. The next day I saw Morning Joe, and they were talking about the influence of Prince. Patty Duke show. That's Nick at Night. A lot of this stuff is stuff that as I was going through it, I'm like, man, this is Nick at Night. This is growing up, turning on Nick at Night with my dad, and watching these shows. Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali passed away.
Yeah. Gordie Howe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, big deal. Gordie Howe. Actually, I have a friend who wants the stadium to be named after Gordie Howe.
It should be. It should be. Instead of Little Caesars, Dave Dombrowski, we just have to say here in Michigan, Dave Dombrowski is the owner of Little Caesars, and Little Caesars is what owns also the Tigers and the Wings. And just come on, Little Caesars Stadium. Dave, do the right thing and name that thing Gordie Howe Stadium.
He's got to do it. Gary Marshall created Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Mork and Mindy.
Yeah.
Again, those are titans of TV. Miss Cleo passed. Yeah, Miss Cleo. That's a bummer. I'm still going to keep using Miss Cleo whenever I make fun of somebody who claims to know a lot more than they're actually capable of knowing.
Yeah.
But, she died, and that was a deal. You've got Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder passed away, who, man, Blazing Saddles, great. For someone who's in comedy, Blazing Saddles is just, it doesn't get better than that, man. The Mel Brooks movie, Blazing Saddles. He was also in Young Frankenstein, Willy Wonka. Tons of great roles for Gene Wilder. It's really sad.
Yeah, Arnold Palmer.
Yep.
Yeah, you have Leonard Cohen. That broke my heart, man. Arnold Palmer, of course, with golf. I'm a big golfer. I enjoy it. I don't play it as often as I would like to. We should get some kind of a.
We should play.
We should play, Joe. Maybe even have like a sporting event, an outing.
We
could do a scramble.
PaleoRadio
scramble.
Paleo scramble.
Yeah. So Janet Reno, she's gone. Leonard Cohen, the one who wrote the song Hallelujah.
Yeah.
His rendition of it isn't as popular or well known, but it's the original. it is the original. He's the man for it. Mrs. Brady died.
Yeah.
And this is a big one that I think a lot of people would skip over. Gwen Ifill. Respected, groundbreaking journalist, forging a path for the black women who came after her. Best known for her work on Washington Week and NewsHour. And I remember seeing her.
Yeah.
And to know that the work that she did made it possible for people after her, African-American women, to enter that business is a big deal. Especially, we've talked about how hard it is. And that's actually another topic we've discussed on the show is journalism, entry rates, black people who are trying to get in, and how hard it is for minorities to get positions in media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's very hard.
Yeah. Fidel Castro.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Fidel's dead. Right?
Fidel.
What is that? The Trump tweet? Fidel at last. Fidel's dead. John Glenn. We talked about John Glenn on the show and how an astronaut. He was beloved by people. People, they loved him. He had a great personality, always optimistic and upbeat. You have Alan Thicke. He's the dad from Growing Pains.
Yeah, he died of a heart attack while he was playing hockey.
I can't even believe that.
Alan Thicke, the dad of Growing Pains. That's Robin Thicke's father, by the way. The guy that danced with Miley Cyrus. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that was Robin Thicke's dad.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
It blow you away, right?
And then Craig Sager, sportscaster for the NBA.
That one hurts my heart, man. Craig Sager was known as this man who had these extremely outlandish suits on the sidelines. I mean, we're talking crazy colors. And he would get picked on by the players, all in jest, right? But they would make a lot of fun about it. And particularly him in his interviews with Greg Popovich, who Popovich is not very keen to interviews for the San Antonio Spurs. He and Sager would have this really funny dynamic and back and forth. And it's really sad that he has passed away. And it was a long, long battle with cancer that he had recovered from and had to fight again. And it was it's just a sad thing.
So you're seeing so many of these people who are dying. And, I hate saying this, but we're going to see, sadly, more of this because that's what happens when you have huge booms of babies that are being born. And that generation gets much older. And you have, this has to be noted, and tip of the hat to Nate Kettle of the Boiling Kettles for bringing this on. A lot of these people are people, and not all of them, but a lot of people that are dying early on were heavy drug users that are dying of heart conditions. Yeah. With lots of cocaine. And, you're looking at Prince, you're looking at Bowie, you're looking at Carrie Fisher, right? That's another one. You're looking at these people, and... it's going to be a sad thing to watch, and we're going to watch as many of our favorite people pass away. But, I look, Joe, as we're running out of time, and I think we're facing 2017. It's our first show. And, I wanted to say that I have absolutely loved working with you since we decided to do this and to come together to make Paleo Radio a real thing again. And I'm so excited. In fact, I told you on the phone, and I cried, in fact, and I said, I don't even know if I've ever been more optimistic about what this is and about where we're going and the future that this show has. And I'm so happy and content, in fact, and challenged every day to do better and to give it more and more and more, to say, man, what can we do with this? What can we do with ourselves to really put ourselves into this and evolve in a way that says it's not just pitching ideas anymore, but we're investing our personalities and our talents and our time and even our money into what we're doing. And I'm so pumped about our future. So I'm excited for 2017. Thank you very much for saying that, man. I feel the same way. We put a lot of work into the show, and we are moving into the right direction, folks. In terms of what we have with celebrities, it is sad to see them go, but there is a lot of positive things about 2017, particularly for this show and what we're looking forward to. And we hope that you guys stick around and stay with us to do it because, man, there's going to be a lot of work put into this, but we are onward and upward, and things are going in the right direction. And we're really happy with those who have stayed with us and stayed consistent all the way back to episode 1. That is free on Spreaker, by the way. Yeah. But people that have been listening all the way back till then, thank you very much for being a part of the Paleo Radio ride, and we hope 2017 is more of the same. Well, there's the music at the end of the show. You got to go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/PaleoRadio. Also, find us on Facebook. Enjoy the conversation. Please take part in it. We're there every single day, and we're always engaging with people. You can find us at facebook.com/PaleoRadio. Yes, and I'm going to be at Sunday Night Funnies on 28th Street. We'll send the details, but it's going to be this Sunday, January 8th, starting at 8 p.m. Don't want to miss it. And this upcoming Sunday, I'll be hosting Cafe Inquiry for Center for Inquiry over at Schuler Books on 28th Street in Grand Rapids. Thank you, guys, and we will see you next week.
You've been listening to Paleo Radio, exclusively with Secular Media Group.
We're passionate about compassion. This is Public Reality Radio, WPRR.